This is one of those times where I hated that my first impression was right. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome to my channel. My name is Stephanie Yates Anya Buile, Steph Anya for short, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Today, I'm going to be breaking down everything that we saw unfold between Tim and Alex on Love is Blind Season 7. If you're curious, stay tuned. What's on your mind? Now, keep in mind there will be spoilers, and also please know that I have never met any of these people and I'm providing insight based on an edited show. So we're not getting full pictures of what these people are or even their relational dynamics. We're just getting glimpses, and I'm basing this off of what is familiar to me based on what I'm seeing in session and hoping that it can help you all recognize any of these dynamics that might be present in your life or the lives of people that you love. Let's jump right in. I talked about Tim in the first impressions video, and one of the first ways that we met him is where he's sharing a story about a shirt that he bought out of spite.
The girl that I seriously talked to, I was like texting her and I was like, hey, which one of these shirts do you like? And I was like, I like this one. And she's like, ugh, I hate that color. And I bought it out of spite.
And my question was, why did you even ask her? Or did you really just want to ask her so that you could irritate her? And so that was my first impression of him. The other thing he said that was kind of a yellow flag to me is he starts talking about how that all the women that he wants don't understand him.
I have always had a problem feeling understood by the women that I am interested in. And my mind, to me, is the most intimate part of me.
And that is always a flag for me when it seems like a person is more focused on how the people they've dated have wronged them and not reflecting on, well, if this is happening in multiple situations, what am I doing wrong? Right? So that was a sign to me initially that there might be an issue with accountability when it came to him, because to say that every woman that he wants doesn't understand him, first I'm like, why are you so difficult to understand? And then I'm like, well, what is the pattern in how you're communicating what you want that's making them have difficulty with understanding you? In that first date that we see between them, where Alex shares about both of her parents having MS.
My dad and my stepmom, they've been married for 25 years. And my stepmom, she is a saint because she has to, like, you know, bathe him, take care of him. Then you have my mom, never married, in a 15-year relationship with this man, just living their best life. But when her MS was getting really bad and she now has to walk with a cane, he dropped her.
So much of their entire relationship was a foreshadow for how things ended. So when Tim starts sharing about his family.
I had two sisters, both of them have passed away now.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Were those your only siblings?
I am the baby brother, so I always tell people I have little brother energy.
And this is one of those things where it becomes easy a lot of times with my clients, especially when they start talking to me and I'm asking them what they like about the person they're seeing, and they start sharing with me about all of that person's trauma. That to me says you're looking for someone to fix. You're looking for someone that you can be their rock, that you can be their bright spot. That doesn't tell me anything about why they're a great fit for you. And so my concern with Tim and Alex was that the thing that Alex is attracted to is wanting to be the light at the end of someone's tunnel. So much of the conversations were focused on Tim's life that I really couldn't get a read on Alex. The only thing that I could pick up on was that she seemed to be pretty empathetic, because as Tim was sharing the story of losing his sister and his sister getting lupus, and Alex was crying, and one thing that I noticed is that she never said to him, I'm crying. Sometimes when people say that in the pods, it's almost performative to me, like you want this person to know that you're crying, almost to get brownie points. And I thought that it was interesting that Alex was just kind of taking all of that in, being very affected by it, and really being kind of private about the fact that it was impacting her so much. On their next date, they're having a little bit more fun, and Tim is talking about,
You remember our first conversations were like very heavy, but like a big question mark for me. I was like, can I have fun with her? Because I feel like it always is so heavy. I don't know if it can ever be light. And like, I feel like it's the most fun I've had with you, and I love that.
And it could just be me, and I'm curious what you all think, but it was to me feeling kind of like Tim was auditioning Alex to be his fiance. It didn't feel like, to me, a reciprocal exchange of him trying to figure out, how can I be better for you? What are you looking for in a partner? You know, they did have some good conversations, but I really wanted to hear more about Alex and what she was looking for in a partner and things like that. So two things that I mentioned in the first impressions video that are definitely relevant here is that I thought that Tim was creating to me what was a heartwarming moment, but also could create a sense of pressure.
I get to give my parents one more daughter.
He's not saying that she would be a replacement, of course, but to say that they'll have another daughter and the other daughters that they had have passed away, I thought that was a lot of pressure. And I think that we did end up seeing what that looked like in reality when they broke up. And then also he gives Alex his sister's bracelet. So again, one way you're communicating, I have faith in this relationship and that's why I'm giving you this. But in another way, it's kind of like bringing her in on a trauma that's not her own. And so I thought that that was, again, something that I was really worried about the timing of that. Maybe once you met her in person and you felt comfortable that this is your person, something like that. But I thought that to do that before meeting her, before even proposing to her, to me, it felt like a really big risk. And I was worried about the pressure that could come with that. And this is what love bombing can look like, which is really kind of like expediting that timeline, like giving a person a lot of assurances before you can really feel confident with them. Then we get to the reveal of Tim and Alex. And this is where we start seeing one of those things come up that was similar to the shirt. Tim likes to say,
I'm a dog.
And Alex was communicating that it's very irritating to her. And I think he was thinking of it as a playful thing.
Please do not say.
Don't ever forget it.
Wrap it up.
Don't ever forget it.
I hate that you say that.
I love that you hate it. I love that you hate it.
Tim was interacting with Alex a lot of times like a little brother. He was teasing her in a way that I don't think she really enjoyed.
Call animal control because the dog.
Please, will you please stop saying that?
There's like one thing she doesn't want you to say, so you want to say that more is the same as asking someone what shirt they like just to buy the shirt that they say that they don't like.
Ain't nothing but the dog.
Please. I said, say it one more time.
Ain't nothing but the dog in it.
Stop saying the dog. Oh my God.
That's about where you
It's
walk
so
away.
cringy. Stop.
That's
That's
good.
the one thing. I said, don't say you
I
can.
love it, and I told you I was gonna say it.
He seems to enjoy kind of irritating people, and there are a lot of people that do like that. For a lot of couples, I see that as like a recipe for disaster. It can be fun in the beginning. I see a lot of people when they were dating, they're both so playful and things, but when that persists and you've been together 10, 15 years, I've seen it where it even affects like attraction, where they're like, his personality is a turnoff to me now. And I just feel like we're not on the same level of maturity. I hear that in sessions all the time. And so it's one of those things where you have to be very careful. You know, there's one thing is like teasing, being playful. There's another thing to enjoy irritating your partner, and it can be a fine line, but it's easy to recognize it, especially if a person is directly communicating with you that they don't want you to do it. And I think the more that Alex communicated that, the more that Tim wanted to do it.
Please stop. It's so annoying.
Alex tries to bring this up again in Mexico.
I feel like I get annoyed.
What annoys you? What's like the little thing?
I don't like repeating myself.
And Tim doesn't even realize, I think, that she's basically trying to passive aggressively tell him that she's been repeating herself. I think she might be referring to the dog thing, but there may be other things that she feels like she'd been repeating as well. And then Tim says,
I don't argue and I don't yell. So if I find myself doing any of them two things, I know it's time to go.
You know it's time to go?
Yeah, because I don't argue.
Back for your wife?
I don't.
that's another yellow flag for Alex to say that when you get to a point where you're frustrated and having to argue, especially since he seemed to do that more than he was implying he would, that he has to leave. Again, we saw that. The whole thing felt like a big foreshadow to how their relationship ended up ending. So for him to say that if he got to that point, I could tell that that was something that was also concerning to Alex, especially because Tim kept saying that the thing he likes the most about Alex,
she knows that I'm gonna talk my and she can talk her back. If I push, don't be scared to push back. I love it.
Yet it seems like if she does push back, that could be something that would be construed as an argument, which means you would leave. So what is it? Do you want someone who is completely compliant with what you're wanting at all times? Or are you okay with someone who disagrees with you at times? Will you interpret that as an argument?
I need somebody who's gonna bite back. I don't want somebody who's just always gonna agree with me. Cause like, I agree with me.
In general, I've talked about this before. I'm not a big fan of the giving each other a hard time dynamic with couples.
So how does it feel like being around me, instead of just like staring at a wall wondering?
I hate your taste in fashion.
Good. Why you hate on my style so much? What did my style do to you?
Oh, I love it. I just love picking on you.
For some couples, it does work well, but for many couples, you know, when you have this dynamic where you're very playfully teasing each other all the time, at some point a line is crossed, and you can always say, well, how was I supposed to know that would offend them? Because we all come with insecurities, and you're one joke away from hurting your partner's feelings. And how do you deal with that? Especially when you've established a relationship that's very playful. Sometimes those more serious moments can be uncomfortable because it's not a regular part of your dynamic. A lot of times I have to work with couples who have that dynamic, and so many of our sessions are bringing up things from 10, 15 years ago that were said in a playful tone or as a joke that ended up hurting a person's feelings and affecting their self-esteem and their security within the relationship. It can be a very hard dynamic to navigate. I'm curious if you all have ever been in a dynamic like that, if you're in one now, and how it has worked out for you. I love to know if you all have seen that to be a problem or if it's been successful. So I thought it was so interesting to see that Monica, she was able to pick up on the fact that something happened with Tim and Alex by the end of the evening. And the next thing we see with Tim and Alex is them recounting whatever issue they experienced from the night before, where Tim ended up sleeping separately. What that argument sounded like to me, it boiled down to Alex felt like Tim was personalizing the fact that she was in a low mood.
It's not that I don't want to be here. It's not that I want to be around you. No, I just miss home. That's it. I could have explained it more, and I probably should have, but I just didn't feel like talking about it in that moment.
And he said that because the situation was becoming more explosive, he was trying to leave the situation and she didn't want him to.
Literally tried to remove myself to be cool, and it kept getting thrown back in my face.
So he was prevented from leaving. Tim was saying, like, some of the stuff you said last night is not cool.
I was more offended at being called outside of my name.
What did you call him other than his name?
Well, because he was disrespecting me for like over an hour. I said, you're acting like a little ass bitch.
Of course, it's never okay to call someone out of their name. And I'm assuming that when he came in ready to end the relationship, those are the things that were at the forefront of his mind. A lot of times these kind of conversations do happen on camera, so we can kind of dissect it a little bit more, but because it didn't, we're just kind of trying to fill in the blanks. But I do think it's interesting, the point that was being made by Alex, that what she wants to work on.
If I'm ever in that space again where I'm in my head or don't want to talk, I'll express that first before completely shutting you out.
Because he was personalizing her energy, her vibe, as her being frustrated with him. And this is something that we see happen in couples all the time, where a person might have something happening completely outside of the relationship.
My dad had been admitted to a rehab facility a week before I left. Being 3 weeks not talking to them, it just kind of weighed in on me at that moment, and I just wanted space.
But because of the energy that their partner is feeling, it is hard for them to separate that they have nothing to do with that. Because a lot of times being snappy, being short, those things are happening with your partner, creating the issue with your partner, even if the original frustrations that led to that snappiness have nothing to do with your partner. So I thought that was very interesting. I also respected that Tim tried to leave the situation, and without him being able to do that, it kept getting worse and worse. So that's why I'm also a big advocate for, if you have even one person in your relationship who needs space, if you guys are having a difficult conversation, give them that space and have an agreed upon time where you guys will come back and communicate with each other. Because a lot of times when we are in the thick of the moment, we're saying things that we regret later on. And it's better to get that distance so that that doesn't happen, where now we have compounded issues that we've got to work through. Because when we had the base issue, instead of addressing that, we instead argued about what the base issue was, and we say mean things, and now we've got so many more things to work through instead of just the primary issue, which typically might not have anything to do with the couple dynamic at all. It could be work stress, family stress, and it ends up becoming a couple issue because we didn't handle it with care. So I could understand why Tim felt the need to walk away from the situation, but that would be with an understanding that he would be coming back to the relationship, not walking away forever.
If I need my space, give me my space.
That's fine. And when
it's
you actually left, I thought you really weren't coming back. The way you were just like, packed all your stuff and leaving, that's a different, like, giving space. That was, I'm never coming back.
That line was crossed.
It seems like Tim was not committed to working through conflict. I did think it was interesting in that moment how Alex really wanted to make sure that they were moving forward.
When I came in here, I came with the full intention that this was probably gonna be the last conversation we ever had.
I don't think you'd come back. I would like for you to come back.
I was always very surprised by Alex's motivation to stay in the relationship when she was telling the girls.
Definitely walking down the aisle. For sure.
And even in this moment where they were having an issue and she was hugging him and saying, I really want you to stay. And you could see that Tim was really contemplating whether or not he wanted to do that. I really wanted to understand more about what motivated Alex in this relationship. I've seen it many times before where someone has a major transition coming up, especially within their family. In this case, Alex has 2 sick parents. She is in her 30s. I think that there is a part of her that has this ticking clock thinking, if I wait much longer, I might not have my parents at my wedding. I may not have the opportunity for my dad to give his blessing or to maybe walk me down the aisle. Things like that that are taken away as you deal with illnesses and getting older. And so I wondered how much of that was a factor for Alex's motivation to make the relationship work, especially once we realized that Tim and her father have so many similarities, where I wasn't sure if maybe that was just a sense of comfort or familiarity for her, or if that was just something that she was doing because she thought it would be really sweet to have someone who reminded her so much of her dad, especially since he'd been sick. So when Tim does meet Alex's family, I loved seeing how that played out. I love seeing the care that he put into making the meals. Alex even asked him to make the plates. I mean, when he read that letter to her dad, I was definitely emotional and tearing up.
Well, Mr. Bird, first and foremost, I was raised to begin all things with a grateful spirit. So thank you. Thank you for bringing Alex into this world. Thank you for raising her and understanding what love is. I'm blessed that we were both willing to bet on ourselves and find each other through this process.
So I thought that it was a very sweet moment and very special. And I also thought it was great that before they were meeting up, when Alex was very concerned and worried about how things would go and she was nervous, that he wasn't personalizing her stress.
Leading up to this, she was very stressed out about, when you meet my family, are you going to ask my dad? Will my dad find out? Will my dad say yes?
That's why I have my ring on, because I just want.
So I get it. Alex's love for her family is the reason why I fell in love with her.
He was listening in for the things that she wanted. So those were those moments where I was like, okay, I can kind of see what Alex sees, maybe some things that happen off camera that would really make her very motivated to stay in the relationship with him. Because I did love to see how all of that played out. Her family loved him. And, you know, sometimes with these relationships, you have a certain opinion about them. Then you have those moments where you look at it and you're like, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this will work out. We've all been there when it comes to Love is Blind, because we only see a snapshot and these are human beings. We're not fortune tellers. So Tim meeting Alex's family was actually a very uplifting moment, and I really enjoyed seeing that. So just to realize that 2-3 days later, he is going to end the relationship, I could see why Alex will look at that as a betrayal. So then we fast forward to Alex meeting Tim's family. This was the one that I was really interested in because Tim talked so much about his family in the pods, and they are such a huge part of his identity that I was very curious about just how the meeting would go. And it seemed to go pretty well. I mean, Tim's mom is definitely the voice of the family. His dad seemed to be a little bit more in the background. And she was explaining some of the characteristics about Tim that may be difficult to manage in a relationship because she's the same way in her relationship with his dad.
Sometimes to me, Drake's vulnerabilities can come out as almost like a separation type of thing. Have you seen that in him at all? You have? Okay. He definitely gets that trait from me. Don't you feel like that? Don't you feel like I get like that?
Yes.
And was that hard for you to kind of get used to?
I'll admit, yeah.
And so that was interesting to see. I love to see her self-awareness there, just saying like, I know that my son is like this, I am like this as well, and it's a struggle for my husband. The other thing that happens is Tim talks to his family and he tells them how he is not physically affectionate. And his mom says that that's something that he needs to work on.
You know I'm not physically affectionate. Do not touch me. That's just how I am, but that's something she wants all the time. But if we just got in an argument, I'm not going to want to cuddle.
I don't know exactly what we're talking about, but when you are in a relationship, a marriage, you kind of have to like be open to what hurts your partner.
And so again, I thought that his parents seemed to show a great level of support for the relationship. I thought that they were doing a good job of holding him accountable, to make sure that he is a good partner. So I thought that that meeting went well. What was surprising is when we see later on the conflict that ended up being the final end of their relationship after a few false ends. And Tim is upset with Alex for a couple of things. And my difficulty with this conversation is I couldn't tell what was the primary issue. So the first one he brings up is,
my parents drove up here 10 hours to meet you. And as soon as the cameras cut, you decided to go to sleep at the first opportunity. These are the most important people in my life. And all I have left in this world. And the choice you made in that moment was to go to sleep.
Okay.
And to me, it is telling.
Okay.
Because that's just not a choice that I would ever make.
Okay.
I'm not here to tell you how to live your life, but for me, that was not okay.
and I thought Alex's response to that was interesting because she said,
I was exhausted. I like to take my naps. We talked for hours about you, about what I would be to them as a vessel, as someone to lean on.
So I guess she felt like they really weren't asking any questions about her. And once again, it felt like she was in a conversation that was all about Tim. And so here is where we started really seeing where I was saying earlier that pressure. I really think this is where we saw it ultimately manifest. So for Tim, he even said in that conversation, my parents are all that I have left. Because of the trauma that Tim and his parents experienced with losing his sisters, I think so much of his identity is tied into his relationship with his parents that even a 1 hour nap felt like not just disrespect to his parents, but disrespect to him. And so much so that he was willing to end the relationship. And then he brings up a whole separate issue, which is him trying to talk to Alex.
I had been trying to communicate with you all day during the day.
Can I just stop you right there?
Sure.
You're saying you were trying to contact me all day. I talked to you 3 times yesterday. And then at 5 o'clock, you
Yes,
texted
but you
me.
were asleep for most of the day.
I was
which
asleep
is
for
fine.
an hour.
Whatever it
From
was,
5
we
to
did not
6.
text much yesterday.
And she was working, and then when she was done, she reached out to him and he's like, oh, you want to talk to me on your terms.
By the time you called me, you were ready to talk to me on your time. And at that point, I feel like if I haven't been talking to you all day, and now I don't feel like talking, you don't get to dictate that now we get to talk on the phone.
Okay.
Well, alternatively, then that means that she talks to you only on your terms. There are going to be times where both of you are busy, but it seemed like she actually had something going on, whereas you were trying to punish her for not being available to talk to you when you wanted her to talk to you. And the thing that Tim kept saying over and over again is,
My love language is listening.
and that is a very one way of interacting with someone. A relationship should be reciprocal. It should be mutual. She shouldn't be the only person listening. And so if she's telling you that she was busy, are you able to hear her when she tells you that?
Are you listening just to hear, or are you listening as an open mind to move forward?
Then Tim says he wants to hear what she has to say. And once Alex starts sharing that, he becomes more frustrated. And you know that because the way he responds is with such a sharpness.
If it's about the dishes, if it's about me going to sleep, if it's about a text, all of that, it's the slap in the face.
Great. I'm glad you feel that way. There's a lot I could respond to, but there is no scenario that I see myself standing there and saying yes to making you my wife forever. And with that in mind, and I'm glad we can at least agree that I don't ever want to see you again.
Tim seems like he has some difficulty with emotional regulation, and that can be missed in men because with men, a lot of times they're not screaming and shouting, not always, but with a lot of men, they've been taught that they should remain cool, especially Tim, someone who has been in the military. You're not really supposed to show emotions in a way that would make you look weak. So just because he is not yelling, screaming, crying does not mean he's not having difficulty with managing his emotions. I think that he had a hard time processing, interpreting any sort of negative feedback about what he may be doing, and he's willing to dish it out, but he could not take it. And so ultimately, I think that this was a relationship that maybe could have worked, but I think that pride and ego is really the thing that affected this relationship the most. And I'm curious for you all, what you think were the biggest factors that led to these two not being together. I will say I thought it was interesting that they both showed up to the couples mix fixer, especially for Tim to say he never wants to see Alex again, knowing you're going to see her again at this and the reunion. Again, that just shows that he was just saying something to hurt her as bad as he was hurting. And I did feel for Alex because it seemed like she wanted the relationship to work, and she definitely felt very hurt about the fact that Tim made promises to her father that he clearly did not keep.
I did not take you meeting my father and getting him that emotional so lightly. How dare you do that and then just throw it away after 2 days?
So those are my thoughts about Tim and Alex. I don't think Alex was perfect with handling conflict. The thing is, we just didn't see her being very disrespectful on camera. So I can't really say with confidence Alex's contribution. I do think Alex was more motivated to make the relationship work. She often wanted to talk through things and vocalized often that she wanted the relationship to stay intact. When Tim got frustrated, he often wanted to leave or end the relationship. There may have been more balance off screen, but we really didn't see that in the final edit. So it's very difficult to talk about these two and say what one person was doing wrong and what the other person was doing wrong, when I think that a lot of those scenes were focused on things that I thought that Tim probably could have improved on. I feel that Tim really struggles with handling conflict. And though he looks at it as a strength, that if you start arguing or yelling that you need to leave, that ultimately that really prevented them from working through some things that were probably things that they could navigate. They probably could have been happy together. Ultimately, it took us right back to what he said at the beginning, right? Which is that all of the women that he wants don't understand him. If that is a pattern that keeps happening, then he needs to do some self-reflection to see how he's presenting himself in a way that may not be congruent with what he's wanting to express. So let me know your thoughts on their relationship. I ask that you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and please share it with anyone who may find it entertaining or educational. I appreciate you watching this video all the way until the end. And for anyone who's in the live premiere, hi, I love talking with you guys during these lives. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for watching this video all the way until the end. You didn't have to, but the fact that you did helps me out so much. So thank you, thank you, thank you.